welcome back to the Pucking Mad podcast. Today, we're joined by Harrison Goode and Charlie Ottowell of the MK Thunder. I love the name, by the way, MK Thunder. It sounds great. Harrison, do you want to introduce yourself first, mate? Because like I said, you could do a better job of it than me.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so I'm Harrison Goode. I'm one of the forwards for MK Thunder. I've played for the team consistently pretty much since I was about 16 or 17. Pretty much as soon as I came out of juniors. So yeah, I've been with Thunder a very long time. And yeah, I'm feeling a bit old now. With being on the podcast with Charlie. So yeah. So that's a bit about me. I don't know if you want anything. I don't know if you want anything else at all. Or
no, don't worry. That's great. Yeah, don't worry. I know the feeling of feeling old. If it makes you just before this podcast, and I put my back out, so don't worry about that one. Okay, brilliant. Charlie, what about you? If you could introduce yourself a bit.
I'm Charlie. I'm one of the defensemen with the Thunder. I'm in my first year with the Thunder. It's been a wicked season. Obviously, first year is lots of experience, but absolutely love being with the boys. It's my first season back in kind of a good level of hockey since juniors. Starting off with a great bunch of boys.
Really cool. That's great. If we could talk about, obviously it's your first season, Charlie, but we'll talk about generally the season as it's gone. It's been a challenging season, I'd say. If we could start with you, Harrison, how would you say you feel the season's gone?
So I think the season this year, although the sort of score lines haven't properly reflected it for us, I feel like the teams in the league where we're at this year as closely matched as they ever have been. I think in previous years, having played in this league for a number of years now, this is the first time that I felt that even though some teams are ahead and others are behind, all the games have been quite close games. And in comparing it to sort of previous years, I think there were always the standout, three or four teams at the top of the league, and then there were two or three sort of teams at the bottom, and then you had a kind of mix in the middle. But it was always the same way for a number of years before that. And obviously the league has evolved over a number of years as well. And I think the standard of hockey in the UK is becoming better. We're seeing a bit more money come into the sport, which is a good thing. But yeah, I think what we're seeing, and like I say, that the scorelines don't sort of necessarily reflect it for us. But I think across the league as a whole, when you sort of look at it holistically across all of the teams, I think there are there's a Streatham are a standout as they have been for a while. But apart from that, a lot of the other teams are, from what I see, I don't go to every game, I don't watch every game, I just sort of see the scoreline, and sometimes the scoreline doesn't reflect the actual game, but kind of see it, and there's quite a lot of close competition, and it really is almost anyone's anyone's league. Whereas before you'd always say, well, you could kind of put your money on the top sort of three or four that would be in that sort of top spot, and then you could kind of discount the rest. But this year I think it's kind of changed quite a bit, which is good. It's good to see. It's good to see that sort of evolution of the league and how it's the skill level is starting to kind of even out a little bit across all teams.
Yeah, it definitely does. It's quite interesting across every single league, I think, in the UK, actually. It's quite amazing. Charlie, what about for you? Like you say, it's your first sort of season at this kind of level. How's it been for you? Like, obviously, I imagine a massive learning curve, but how's it been?
Yeah, it's been a huge learning curve. Like you said, it has been incredible. It's kind of just understanding the way how every team plays different, and it's understanding how they play. And I think Harrison's right in the ballpark. Like, everything's starting to get a bit closer. It's been a tough season for us and sitting at the bottom of the league, but we've had some very close score lines. We are competing with those top teams. We've competed with Chelmsford and Slough, and we've shown we're a team that's going to bring a hard battle to every game with a bit of resilience as well.
Yeah, definitely. It's a really awesome thing. Obviously, Harrison, for you, like you say, you've been around in this league for a while. What do you think has kind of kind of caused or made this sort of like jump in ability or competitiveness? What would you say has caused it generally?
Yeah, I think overall, I think there's been, and I'm not I'm not a junior coach or anything like that, but I think it really starts from the grassroots. And I think since I started playing when I was 7 or 8 or however it was, I was a little bit later to it, but the coaching of the junior clubs across the UK has changed massively. I think there's a much different outlook, and I think with people coming in from different countries, from Europe or from the US and Canada, I think having that expertise coming in, a lot of those people helping out and coaching, I think has given the UK as a whole a good kind of step in the right direction in terms of that type of coaching. So, like I say, when I started in the sort of league, when I was 17, I'm 32 now. So when I was sort of 16, 17, since then, if you kind of look at the kind of junior coaching, I think it's changed quite a lot. So the talent and the people that we're having coming through and the kids that are coming up into the league are just a lot better than they were when I was 16 or 17. If you put me, not saying that I was a great hockey player now or even at 16, but if you kind of compare the two sort of levels now, I think that's increased it a massive amount. So with these young players coming through, I think that's helped it a lot. I think with a lot of the rinks in the country having been refurbished and just being a nicer place to be in, I think it's attracting more people. It's attracting a bit more money. When I was, playing when I was a lot younger, it was very rare that you were sort of a team was sponsored. They were a lot of the time sort of self-funded or self-run. I remember having to sort of pay to play, but now we're at a stage where there are sponsors that are sponsoring teams. There are teams that are getting good gates. Like you go to any Streatham game, they've got a good gate, the same as Chelmsford. And it really helps, obviously, a massive amount for those types of clubs to bring in the crowd. It's harder for the other clubs like us when we've got Lightning above us. They're obviously bringing in quite a lot of the gate. So we kind of miss out on a lot of that footfall to bring in that additional money. So we rely quite heavily on sponsors. But I think that's probably those are probably the two key things that I've seen over the last decade or so, just, in terms of how the league's developed and the amount of talent coming through and the amount of money that's slowly being put into the sport now. And we're starting to see that increase. I think year on year, it will exponentially get better as the years come as well.
Yeah. I mean, I'm just going to jump in on the junior side of what Harrison said. The juniors that come through are unbelievable. I mean, the training that they get, these kids during the summer, they're not just doing off-ice training, they're going abroad and training and bringing that back here. You look at the likes of the juniors that Slough have got and what Slough are doing with their junior program. Like, this is what's changing the game. The next coming year, it's going to be a completely different game with what Slough are doing, etc. And Streatham, they've got some unbelievable juniors. So what they're doing is going to change it, and it's going to be a younger game, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I think just to add to that as well, I think the two-way sort of contracts and partnerships that we see between teams as well. When I was a lot younger and in the past, I don't think there was as much communication between clubs to encourage people to step up and start training and start playing in leagues above that and giving people a chance. So I think there's a much more of an open view to bring people in, help them develop and help them progress. So I think that again helps a massive amount. You kind of see players now on two-way with in our league and then the league above, and they're playing both leagues, and it just helps the standard. They might not get a ton of ice time, but even just training with those people, it helps so much, and just getting that extra ice time.
Yeah, definitely. It's something that, as I've spoken to players, they speak a lot about this kind of ice time is key, and obviously we struggle with facilities in this country when we don't have as many ice rinks as we would, I think we would like to. But getting people in two ways do seem to be a great way. Charlie, if you wouldn't mind, can we talk about your time in the Bracknell system? Bracknell was kind of historically very sad now it's no longer there, which it's probably a relief given that the rink was falling down anyway. But what's the can you talk a bit about that time within that system, because it's historically produced some great talent over the years, and did you think that was?
I mean, it comes down to a coaching, a lot of it. I mean, when I first started there, I was under Lucas Smittle, and the stuff he was doing then was great for that time. It was unbelievable what we were doing. You know, multiple off-ice sessions a week, power skating sessions, along with your training sessions as well. So the ice time that we were available to get as a Bracknell junior system was, there was loads of it for the juniors. Along then keeping for the Hornets and the Bees at the time, allowing for younger players to go through the Hornets and then up into National League, or back then like the EPL, etc. So it's all down to ice time effectively. And John Nike, we were really lucky to have loads of ice time there. Having coaches that were really high up in the IHA at the time. So like I said, Lucas Smittle, who have played at that high enough level over abroad, whether it's in the States or in Europe, to bring their training over here. That's what made the massive difference for us, really. I mean, you look at the training even now over in Europe to here, there's a huge difference. And to have that over here, that's what made that massive difference to the juniors, having that ice time.
Yeah, it's really cool. Obviously with their MK Thunder, it's like this. What's the move forward? How is the team looking forward? Because obviously this season, I think, it's a good place for a building block. Oh, there you are. There's the goalie. But yeah, like, what's the sort of, like, would you say, Harrison, as you've been here a while now, you kind of know, is there a kind of an eye on the future, would you say, for the team?
So I think it's always, I mean, Thunder, for as long as I've played there, it's always been seen as a bit of a development club from you know, the youngsters that come out of the junior system in Milton Keynes or the surrounding areas to take that step into, you know, actual competitive hockey. And I think more so now than ever, because we've got a much better relationship with Lightning, we're seeing a lot more of the younger players that play with us and that train with us starting to really now get an opportunity at that higher level, even if it's just through that additional ice time like we spoke about, and just spending time on the ice with those players as well. It helps a huge amount. So the view for Thunder is, you know, it's always been to, you know, to help develop players and bring younger players in. We've always been quite a young team. There've been a couple of years where, you know, it was a majority older sort of team, and I think it kind of changed a little bit to really help develop the younger players, build them up, build their confidence, and get them in, and hopefully work their way up into, you know, into the other leagues as well, or at least give them a chance into that sort of level. So yeah, and it's always been, you know, one of those ones, like I say, kind of going back to the gate and the money. You know, we've got sponsors and things now, you know, sponsored by Right Move and a handful of other businesses. It's really helped with enabling us to get ice time and things like that. But because we're never going to have a massive gate, it's always going to be hard when we want to bring in some, you know, key impact players like imports, or, you know, other people in the British system who either need to travel to get there, or, you know, want a little bit of cash to kind of cover equipment and other things like that. We all know how many times you go through sticks in a season, and they're not exactly cheap. So we've always struggled in that element compared to some of the other teams that have got that money, and you kind of see that gap quite a lot when other teams are able to bring those people in, able to give them, you know, whether it's a bit of petrol money or helping out in some other way. We've just not been able to do that, which is where as a club, we've suffered a little bit, and you can kind of see that as a reflection in the team that we have, and doing with what, you know, the best with what we've got.
Yeah, I mean, one thing I will say is it's quite amazing that it says a lot about the sport and probably the work done in Milton Keynes when it comes to ice hockey, that a kind of a national company like Right Move is coming in and sponsoring. I mean, that's really cool, and it talks about sort of development. Charlie, for you, obviously going to Milton Keynes was probably it. And playing there, how is it for you when it comes to your kind of future in the sport and things like that? Like, are you quite positive about your time there? How is it?
Yeah, looking forward, I'd love to be with the Thunder for quite a while. I think the program that they've got going there, like Harrison said, with the whole development side of it, it's been absolutely incredible. Coach has been great helping me with how I'm playing my game. I think what Lauren's doing with the club's been awesome. And I think just the general group of guys we've got there, like Harrison, Siege, Ali, Alex, those boys, that you don't. If you do mess up, you do, I don't know, throw a puck away, make a bad decision. They're there to kind of give you your options on what you could have done, right? So my future really at the moment, obviously I'd like to take the sport for me further. I would like eventually, when I'm a bit older, to make that step up to national. But for the time being, I've said this for quite a while this season. I'd like to stay with Thunder and develop there as well as develop in other training facilities.
Yeah, definitely. I think as well, I can imagine that, like, we kind of don't want to go over this again, but it's the ice time as well, I'd imagine, which for developing the standard in the national one, I think both North and South is insanely high now for what it is. So that's really cool. Yeah. If we could talk about, I don't want to jinx anything or anything, but so if you don't want to talk about it, just tell me to shut up. But you've got a few challenging games coming up the next sort of few weeks. How are you guys feeling about it?
To be honest, I'm super pumped for it, and it goes back to what I said earlier. I said earlier we have competed with these high end teams, and to be honest with you, Stratham's no different. Yes, they're a standout top of the league team, but we've got a good bunch of talent at the Thunder. We've got great goaltending, and if we go in with a good mindset, I think we can give Stratham a run for their money in the first round.
Yeah, I think the same as well. I think the attitude that the team has had throughout the whole season, it's, I think one of the main words that I would just use to describe how we work as a team is just our tenacity. It's the fact that, even if we do go a couple of goals down, no one's heads drop. Everyone's in it together. We keep playing right until the final buzzer. So, and I know with some teams, if they go a couple of goals down and they don't think things are going their way, some teams kind of pack up shop and just say, this is it for this game. I think it's because we've been on the receiving end of some losses. You kind of build that thick skin, and I think we've kind of worked that into our culture to just really outwork. And where we don't necessarily have a ton of like loads of skillful players that we've brought in, our team is quite relatively young. We have to rely on hard work and work ethic, and just outwork other teams. So I think that's going to be the main driver moving forward for the rest of the season, just to play hard and never give up, basically.
Yeah, really cool. If we could talk as well, like, about sort of the national. There's been a lot of talk about teams being added to the National League. There's a lot of ways you could do it, I suppose. I think probably a conference system appears to be the only way it could be done if they're going to do it. How would you guys feel about it as players in the NIHL 1? Are you for teams being added to the National League, losing teams from your division, or would you rather see things stay as they are?
I would. It's a tough question, to be honest. I think there is a couple teams in our league that could definitely go up. Obviously, understand the league's reasoning and why they haven't gone up yet. In my eyes, I'd keep the league how it is for now, for the next couple of years. Kind of see how the National League moves. There's a couple of teams in the National League that aren't doing too well, that in the future there could be swaps of teams. We all know there's teams playing out the same arena in different leagues at the moment. You've got the likes of Slough and the Bees. So it's kind of seeing how that moves forward. And I think I'd like to see it kind of stay how it is for now. We've got a good amount of teams in our league. I think dropping that number wouldn't really work. We get a good amount of games every year, and National League get a good amount of games every year. I can't see it changing.
Yeah, I feel the same in a way. I think if teams were to go up and other teams were to drop down, I still think there's perhaps still a bit of a gap. In the leagues in terms of skill level. So I think the teams that do go up would probably still although they are capable and they could definitely take points off of the teams in the league above, I still think it would be quite tough. We'd probably end up seeing them back in our league the year after. So I think there's still a bit of a gap. I do feel that gap is closing. I think 5 or 6 years ago, I think that the gap was much bigger. But I think I mentioned it before, with the sort of two-way contracts that we're seeing, and a lot of the players training with these teams anyway in this league, I think we're starting to see that close down. And I think if those relationships continue and the opportunity is there for people to do that, I think as we get a bit closer to that and close that gap, I think it would be more viable for those teams to drop down and teams to go up, and it would make it a bit better. But yeah, I think they get the top teams, they get the similar sort of gate. I don't know about budgets, but I think it could be quite close. It'd be interesting to see, but yeah, I think what Charlie said. I think we're probably a few years out from that being a viable sort of option.
Yeah, definitely. In terms of investment, there'd have to be a lot of investment, and we have to be realistic about the sport that we're in. It's a minority sport, I suppose. So trying to get that investment is a challenge. One final question, which I want kind of players' perspective on this, because it's something that we don't have in ice hockey, is the idea of promotion and relegation. How do you guys feel about that idea? As players, would you want that sort of thing? Or are you quite happy with how it is in terms of keeping the conferences or keeping the leagues fixed?
It's a tough question, to be honest with you. I mean, it definitely, we all play for something anyway, but I think having that relegation delegation kind of gives you a little bit more to think about at the start of the season on how you want to play it, and how it gives you something a bit more to play for. Whether it would work in the sport, I think you'd see a lot of movement, and the leagues would be pretty uneven, in my opinion. I think you'd have a couple of national teams move down. You'd see the likes of Slough, Streatham and Chelmsford go up straight away, really. I don't think there'd be a fair balance through the league if that was the case.
Yeah, I think the teams would probably change quite a bit as well. I think, if teams are, for instance, if teams are relegated, I know that people want to play in the league that we're in. So, if a team were to be relegated, I think you'd probably lose a lot of players in that team, and the team would just then change drastically. And then, once you move up, would you be able to move up if you've lost the same team that you had the year before? You do get people that, that will stay with the club no matter what. But then you do have other people that are, just interested in the level of hockey that they're playing. So if they see that as a step back, then, and if teams are kind of forced to move up as well, and people aren't comfortable being in that league and they don't want to, or they don't want to commit because, they play, I think they might even play more games than us in that league above. So it would change the landscape a little bit. So I don't know if that would work. It would be interesting to see if it did. But like Charlie said, I don't think anyone goes into the mentality, wanting to be bottom. I think it still just adds that additional sort of pressure to it anyway. But yeah, it's a tricky question. I don't know if there's a right answer to that.
Yeah, no, definitely. I don't think there is. It's something just people like arguing about, which I suppose is probably one reason why I had it in. No, but honestly, guys, look, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I do really appreciate your time. So thank you so much for coming on.
No, thank you for having us.
Yeah, thank you. It's been a pleasure.